Every time. All right, y'all. Welcome to the Men's Emotional Wellness Symposium. My name is Courtney Brame. I'm here with Dox Diggla, the Brick Citi Buddha.
Hey,
Man,
oop.
how you feeling, man? How you feeling?
Been ripping and been ripping and running all day.
Yeah, you had a
We
birthday. You had a birthday that just passed, didn't you?
yeah, had a birthday. But the birthday festive. I mean, I guess they still going. I'm black, so my birthday is at least a week. But we out here in Atlanta doing like a podcast tour. So
Oh,
wifey got like 4 lined up. I got like 3. So we hit the ground yesterday and we ain't stopped moving since. So yeah,
yeah,
I'm exhausted, but in a good way. Definitely in a good way. Yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna have you introduce yourself real quick to the people, and then we'll just start the
All right.
conversation.
All right.
You know,
Let's get it.
we talked about the notes I
Mm-hmm.
took and everything. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure we'll cover that within the conversation.
Of
But
course.
yeah, go ahead, introduce
Yeah,
yourself
yeah.
for.
So for those of you that may not know your boy, I'm known as Brick Citi Buddha online. Y'all can refer to me as Dox in here. I'm a mindfulness coach, mentor, a relationship counselor. I guess some people will call me a relationship guru at this point. Um, I'm gonna accept that title. I have acquired a nice amount of data. Hopefully, we'll get into some of that today. But I feel like we all gurus in our own right. Guru, when you break down the translation, is literally light and dark, and we all got some of both, right? So I'm privileged to be in a position where I'm able to have these conversations, especially with my brothers, right? I know we got some ladies in the room, and it's dope to be able to have them pull up a front row seat to some of these intimate conversations. But every man that's in here, I'm proud of you, bro, for spending a Sunday where you could be doing anything in the world. And y'all here with us right now, getting this work and getting this healing. I appreciate y'all presence. And yeah, it's your boy, man. We here.
All right, man. So let's start. I want to start with the relationships piece, man, because I see a lot of dating coaches. I see a lot of dating advice. Is here's how to get women. This is what you need to do, right? And there's very few people who are talking about relationships. So
Mm.
I want to hear from you. Like, what are I guess like what would you say differentiates you between you as a relationships coach versus a dating coach?
Yeah, because I feel like we're in an era where dating is kind of antiquated. We are in a space where if you're not dating yourself, if you're not figuring out how to fall in love with yourself, then you will be relegated to the chase, to the ghetto-ness of the dating world in 2024. And I often talk about things I've learned via being a counselor and then having a marriage of my own, having, what people would call toxic relationships in the past. But I try not to use that language because I'm extremely appreciative of my partners previous to my wife. I learned something from every one of those, as painful as those situations may have been. But before I was able to be led to my wife by my own healing, I took myself off the market. My wife took herself off the market. I did a year of celibacy, including no masturbation. Every time I bring up celibacy, a woman want to tell me, well, I did 15 years, but you was DJing that bean a little bit, right? I wasn't doing nothing. I had no type of release whatsoever. And then on my wife's end, she did 4 years of celibacy as she explored the world via van life during quarantine and all that. And we genuinely got in a space where whoever would come that would align with us in any way, shape, or form, business, platonic, relational, whatever, we was open to it. But for the first time in our lives, we didn't need it. For the first time in our lives, the prayer was no longer like, people write on a lot of my posts, God is me again, right? When they see a nice little fancy post or romantic post I put up with me and my wife, there was no more God is me again. Because we was at a point in our journey where we realized God was showing up in all the ways that we miss when we so fixated on a romantic relationship. That person that's holding the door open for you, right? That elderly person that's at the corner that you may be too busy in your phone with, but there's a soulmate level conversation. If you say, hey, you need help getting across the street, right? The romance of reality started to open up to us in a way where we didn't need a fixated point in another person to be able to experience love. And that lane kind of opened us up to the trajectory leading us in the direction of each other. So I would say that even the language of dating, we kind of beyond that in 2024. This is the most connective generation as far as social media, phones. We can reach anybody, but we also the most disjointed as far as humanity has ever been. A lot of that is because we way too ingratiated in the chase in the dating, running after something when really we need to be running inside of ourselves and allow that work to manifest into that person.
I love I wrote down a bunch of things, but the big one is that you said the healing led me to my wife. And
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people do this thing where they think that they gotta be ready before they
Oh.
can do a thing or like take the action steps
Mm,
necessary to get toward the goal
mm,
that they want. And I'm saying goal, that can be a relationship, that can be a career, that can be a passion, that can be creating something,
mm,
right? And what I'm hearing from you is you made the decision to do the work, to do the healing. And on that journey, you were met with your wife
mm,
and you still healing. Is that right?
mm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's some. Can I curse? Can we
Yeah,
keep it
yeah,
a
you
buck
can.
here?
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest piece of bullshit in the world. And I feel like a lot of times that gets thrown on men that, you got to have all your ducks in a row before you can even think about romantic connection, right? I've heard this and I hear it more so from men. I feel like men have been indoctrinated to the degree that we are just okay just being producers and sources of productivity, that we have kind of lost connection with the fact that we human beings at the end of the day. Nobody's going to check out of this thing having mastered all of this shit, including your boy Brick Citi Buddha. I'm, attaining or what is it? I'm going towards a certain level of mastery, but to a large degree, it's a lot of the shit I haven't figured out yet. And when I was in that space, like when I met my son's mother, I'm gonna keep it completely a buck with y'all. I was hustling jewelry, right? I was recovering from my third eye surgery. My kidney had healed to the point where it was like I wasn't worried about that so much. But I had 5 years. I had 3 years of no work history. I had 5 previous jobs I had been fired from, and each one of these jobs was a different industry. I would get fired from one industry, go back to school, get another skill set, get into that industry, get fired again. This happened 5 straight times, and not me doing no craziness. Being a sharp black man in corporate America, I'm sure we in here, we know the vibes, we threats when it's like that. So I pretty much got 8 years of terrible work history. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life, bro, but I knew this was the deepest level of peace I have ever accessed for myself. And when I came across my son's mother, I was literally hustling jewelry. Had a little bit of disability left, but something in me just felt like it wasn't even like a romantic attraction type of thing on a sexual level. It was just a voice in my head and my heart said, "You're supposed to connect with her. You're supposed to help her in some way, shape, or form." And initially, that was my intention. I had no romantic desire whatsoever. It ended up turning into that for a brief second, just for my son to come through, right? And she, in a lot of ways, anchored me because at that time I was about to move to Rishikesh, India. I wasn't going to tell my family. I wasn't going to tell nobody. I was going to move into an ashram and nobody was ever going to see me again. I was about to be out.
Hey,
So
that's
she
a
can she came in my life literally just to ground me back into my humanness. I came into her life to kind of uproot her from her trauma. So we was like shooting stars crossing paths at a point where right where we met, we most needed each other. And as soon as we got what we needed, we were supposed to continue to go our separate ways. But we tried to force it. I mean, we had a son on the way. I tried to make it a family. It wasn't meant for all of that. And then coming out of that, she helped to level up my abundance and vice versa. And then when I met my wife, Candace, this is the best I was ever doing for myself financially, outside of hustling. When I was out here getting it in the streets, of course I had to go out, but legally, this was the first time I was comfortable. I was able to take care of myself, able to take care of my son, but I still couldn't take care of another woman financially and pay all her bills. But the work I had done had led me to a woman that wasn't interested in that. She ain't need me to pay her all her bills. She was fine financially and she was looking for something deeper than what I was able to provide monetarily. We get together and then there's another wave of expansion and abundance for both of us. I was already working for myself. She was still at a job that she hated. My wisdom, my experience helped her to jump off the porch, and she left her job maybe a year into us dealing. And y'all know Candace has expanded exponentially from then. Dox has expanded exponentially from then. So to a large degree, I feel like there's a lot of lessons that's in our shared survival mode, that's in our shared developing our expansion mode that we miss when we think, well, you need to just have all your ducks in a row before you start pursuing people, right? I really think that's bullshit in a lot of ways. Right.
Hey, what? All right. I
Mm-hmm.
kind of lost it a little bit. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad I'm on mute, but I lost it because what you're saying, it very much ties into what the previous presenter, Teddy, shared. He used the Lion King example of him being Simba. So Simba, the trauma of losing his dad, he goes
Yeah.
home. He's blamed for it. They tell him he's not a king. He goes out into
Yeah.
the wilderness. He grows up. He makes unlikely friends, perspectives expanded, and Nala, a woman lion, comes into his
Right.
life and is like, "Hey, you're a king. Like, don't forget you're a
Right.
king."
Right.
And that's it. This was just so beautifully like
Right.
connected. So I was over here losing it. I had to write that
Right.
down. And so often, so what I'm hearing in this is like there's a reciprocity element to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you and I talked about this, and I said this on social media that oftentimes men's healing is often done at the expense of women, or women are doing the work of men on behalf of men. And it sounds like what you experienced is like a flip perspective of that, because you were in the relationship served their purpose, and
Mm-hmm.
then you met your wife and the relationship is actively serving its purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how is this so much different than, this being something at the expense of your partner, you going through this healing and expansion that you spoke of?
Yeah, so there's still a fine line you got to walk, even with what I'm advocating, that we shouldn't paint ourselves into a corner of you got to have all your ducks in a row, but we still got to have discernment. We still got to have an intuitive prowess. We still got to be able to set boundaries. And a lot of times when I work with my couples clients, and I'm gonna advocate y'all do this, even if y'all not in an actual relationship right now, that'll kind of help fine tune the message you send into the universe for the type of person you want. But so this is a freebie right now. If y'all want to send me an extra cash app for this, y'all can. But I'm gonna just let it loose for y'all. So there's this thing I have all my couples do called the relationship contract. Not something they're gonna take to a lawyer and get notarized. I'm not talking about those vibes. I'm talking about being able to like really paint a picture for yourself and for that other individual that you may be with of how you see relationships. And a lot of times we be winging this shit, bro. We'll go to work and we'll have multiple meetings and crunch the numbers and all this other stuff. We have our businesses and our organizations, same thing. The hardest thing we're going to do in life is share life with another individual in the form of what we call a relationship. But we don't crunch no numbers. We don't have meetings. We don't do portfolios. We don't map things out. We just wing this shit. I like you, you like me. We have sex. We attracted. We have the honeymoon phase, and then we wing it for the rest of the time we together. So with a relationship contract, it's 3 different phases to it. The first segment is where you depict in detail your idea of an ideal partner, your idea of an ideal relationship, and not to put the pressure of perfection on nobody, but it's important to see somebody's true north and what their soul is looking for when limitation is not involved. Because to a large degree, we've been convinced that we just have to settle. If you want love, you're going to have to settle in some way, shape, or form. I'm not settling with my wife in any aspect and vice versa. We get every bit of this shit. And she walking in here naked in the background. Hopefully y'all don't see no titties flying around. Get your ass out of here, right? We get to have every aspect of what we was looking for. And when I do this with my couples, when they start to write down those ideals, they start to realize how many things they've compromised on. They start to realize how many of those ideals they never even expressed to their partner, and their partner didn't even know they kind of had in their heart as a desire. So you get your ideals out. The second section is your negotiables. These are the things if you find yourself with a partner and they may be able to meet you, let's say at 60% on certain things that you need. And you okay with 60%. But you also need to talk about how you need that 60% to show up. You also need to talk about your expectations for how long it's going to take 60 to get to 75, to eventually get to 100. Do you even have the capability to get to 100? And once we have that conversation, we can negotiate what you may have 60s on, what I may have 40s on, what we got 100% on. We can put that game plan together. And then the final step is your non-negotiables. Things I cannot budge on whatsoever. Case in point, I spent so much time getting yelled at in previous relationships, abused in certain ways, right? Even physically. when I got to my wife, and it's beautiful because again, the universe just writes the perfect script. She's somebody when she gets in conflict, her voice stays completely monotone. She had 10 years in the military, 6 years as a police officer. So all that rah-rah shit, it was already out of her system by the time I got her to her. So when we had moments of discrepancy, the yelling don't even happen. But that would have been one of my non-negotiables. My being yelled at reservoir is full. I can't deal with another relationship, another day of having conflict handled in that way. A lot of times people don't do this due diligence before they get with somebody, and then they just try to match things together that we don't really have the capacity for. So to a large degree, yes, I feel like we should be giving people more chances than we do, or just giving love more chances than we do, as far as not pushing it into the corner of having all your ducks in a row. But we also haven't really done the work of fine tuning what it is we actually looking for and want. Not just some long ass list of shit, but when you put it in these 3 columns, you are able to have a clear picture from multiple different vantages of what you're looking for, and then you know how to express that to potential partners coming into your life.
That sounds exactly how dating should be done.
Mm-hmm.
But it ain't really no best time or right time to bring up that conversation that's ideal for everybody. But what you spoke to so beautifully in step 2 is compatibility, right? You
Mm-hmm.
use that percentages. All right, if you give me 60% of what I need. All right, are we working towards getting to 100, or are we working backwards from there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't do these assessments. We'll just,
Mm-hmm.
not intentionally
Mm-hmm.
look up and be with somebody we ain't even compatible with, and then we're becoming more incompatible,
Yep.
even because like there are things that might be at 40% they may not be aware of. Using the example of yelling, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm someone who yells in conflict and you're someone who can't stand being yelled at in conflict, we can't handle conflict. And in conflict
Mm-hmm.
is probably where you get the
Exactly.
best assessment of compatibility. So just so I'm clear in communicating this out into the world well, speaking to building on top of compatibility is important in your 3 steps of the relationship
Mm-hmm.
contract as well. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And then you spoke to the non-negotiables. I think a lot of us don't know our non-negotiables. And not only do we not know them, but not
We don't
knowing,
honor them.
yeah, we don't know them, we don't honor them, and we can't communicate that to the other person.
Yep.
So what are some ways for us to identify our non-negotiables when it comes to relationships? We going to bypass the dating part and speak to relationships.
Yeah. So your non-negotiables present themselves usually first through sensation. Before a thought that I don't like this projects itself, the first thing you're going to notice, if you have the awareness to be able to do so, and this is why meditation is so important, it gives you a heightened, expanded awareness of yourself first, and then the world around you. So I'm at a point in my journey where I used to have to emotionally, energetically redline before I noticed some shit was off. Now, let's say like your meter of emotion is like, MPH. Before it even redline, shit, before it even goes to 5 miles per hour, when it hits 1 on the miles per hour of my level of ease, and it goes in the direction of dis-ease, I'm able to notice that. I'm able to notice that sensation first fluttering into my heart. I'm able to notice that uneasy sensation fluttering into my belly, right? Maybe sensation in my head. And often you're able to know what emotions are you're dealing with based on where they show up in the body. That's another thing I work with my couples on. It's called the 6 healing sounds. Y'all could check that out and look that up, but it gives you the different home addresses of the primary what we would call negative emotions we feel. So case in point, grief, sadness, and depression is stored in the area of the chest, the lungs, right? Fear stored in the kidneys, anger stored in the liver, hate, disdain, impatience stored in the heart, worry stored in the gallbladder, pancreas, and spleen. So I'm at a point where I have enough awareness in the midst of the actual exchange when shit is starting to heighten. I could feel first sensation is showing up. Then I'm able to notice, all right, where is this at in my body? This is via me actually having the conversation. So the logical mind is working, but the feminine energy is also open, having a conversation beneath the words. And as I'm noticing what's happening in myself, a lot of times I'll indicate to my wife or vice versa, Matter of fact, let's table this. Let me go feel into what it is I feel right now, because I do feel sensation arising. And when I dig into that, there'll usually be some level of a conversation that we need to have where I don't feel comfortable. I feel, hurt by something, and or vice versa. So first we got to be able to notice what's happening inside before we can even know what the boundary we need to set is, and then honor it in real time, moment to moment, especially if you're talking a long-term relationship. You're going to have multiple opportunities presented to you to be able to notice what your body and your spirit is saying to you via that actual conversation. So the sensation first, the thought, and then the emotion that spills out of that. Out of that homework, you'll be able to start to realize, okay, that's actually a non-negotiable. That makes me feel so uncomfortable. I probably can't deal with that just yet. That's a non-negotiable. That list will come together for itself. You got to notice what's happening here on a micro level first.
I want to transition and ask you about you mentioned feminine energy. You said my feminine energy, and I want to come back to that. But I gotta ask you about well, just make this comment really, and then you can say what you want about that, and then I want to come back to the feminine energy.
Got you.
The reason that this is an emotional wellness symposium is because I believe that a lot of our mental health conversations are much too surface level for people who for so long have been taught to avoid emotions, to not, just don't have feelings. You can't do that. Go do what you need to do without the emotions. And I'm very much an advocate for the work of Dr. David R. Hawkins. He wrote a book, Letting Go, speaking to the anatomy of emotions. And what I just heard you speak to was not just the emotions, but like where in the body you can identify the emotions. And when you did this thing with the meter, what I envisioned is if you are in fact connected with your body, which a lot of men, we'll talk about this with Cam later, are not connected with their bodies because of society and the way that we've been told to look at pleasure or to look at what our jobs and roles are as men. So what I'm hearing here is essentially what this is about, and that being emotional intelligence, which is oftentimes lumped into femininity. Therefore, men are resistant to that being connected with their body, where there is so much power, where there is so much intelligence. And we think that because we are men or have to be masculine, that we can't do things women do and have this emotional awareness or even have emotions. And the way that you just spoke to your feminine energy is like that's where people need to be in order to use that as information for how to navigate their lives. The question in that is, how did you bypass all the bullshit of men ain't supposed to have emotions to get to a place of being able to not only have the emotion, but to be able to identify it, know what it means, and be able to take action as a result of being aware of what the emotion is that you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I literally had to get pulled out of society in a way where I had to go, like Jay-Z said, I went through that, so you ain't had to go through that, right? I was literally in the forest for 3 years of my life while I was recovering from being blind by myself. I said in one of my songs, I haven't had human interaction in a month, except for going to get groceries, gas, and blunts. You know what I'm saying? No human contact. So I really didn't give a fuck what society had to say because I was in a mode of desperation while starting to acquire these sciences that I started to see very quickly being effective for myself. And I'm a lab rat. If I'm interested in something, I'm going to go to the bottom of the rabbit hole and try to extract all the data. You probably the same way. I see you over there with the pearly whites, right? A lot of men is like that. People in general, right? But I didn't have to deal with what society said about it. And it's interesting, before I got to that point, I was very vocal on Facebook. I had a real pop in Facebook before I ever got to Instagram. And this is when I was still ratchet. So I feel like I'm the first person in the history of social media that was doing question of the days like 12 years ago, and my shits will have thousands of comments. Dudes started to realize like, yo, all the baddies on Doc's comment section, y'all better get in there. So it was lit. But when I transitioned out of that, social media, Facebook, talk show host type of vibe. And when I started to go through things in my life, I really didn't have nobody else to talk to. My parents didn't really understand my journey. They didn't live in the state. My siblings, no girl at the time. My homies had kind of flaked out. So I started to be very vocal about what I was experiencing emotionally, feeling suicidal, feeling coming out of being homicidal when I was still in the streets. People was telling me, you're not supposed to put that on Facebook. We just here to have fun. I ain't had no choice though. It felt like a release to just type those words, even though I knew I was going to be judged for them. Right. So I did have to take a leap of faith in that way and understand I got to get this shit out in some way, shape, or form. But then that led me on a trajectory towards my Martin at the ashram when he was on his Najee Ramba shit. If y'all remember that episode where I was just in the forest by myself and all those ideas of manhood via meditation, via listening to my own thoughts, exposing how the dots connected and what I saw manhood to be and what I saw the world to be. That shit, like incrementally, thought by thought, started to get purged out of my system. So when I hopped off the porch, when Spirit told me it's your time to start teaching, it's like that whole program had been wiped out. And this is why I was able to discover a lot of things I talk about now in my reels, because I had to go into the doldrums, into the dungeon, to be able to remove those programs and see if this other way can work, if being emotional as a man can work. What happens if I express myself to my partners, to my mother, or whoever it is? Am I going to be judged even more? Am I going to become a pariah even more? The opposite happened. I became extremely abundant. I became extremely magnetic and powerful in a lot of ways by tapping into that feminine energy, because that's what a lot of people don't realize, especially men. Feminine energy does not require empirical data. Masculine energy is logic. We got to crunch numbers. We got to do 1+1 to be able to get 2. I tell my clients all the time, women will wake up one day like, I need to check this nigga phone, right? No empirical data on the surface to warrant that. He ain't fuck up, right? But she just woke up with a sixth sense knowing, let me see what's going on here. 9 times out of 10, she was on point, right? Because that feminine energy, the emotional bandwidth in that is so expansive. Just like on an anatomic level, the heart is doing more and more intelligent in certain ways than the brain is. As above, so below. So a lot of times when men aren't confronting and diving into emotion, we are missing the wisdom that's inside those emotions that's trying to help us navigate our day-to-day life that will actually affect your bank statement, your bottom line, what you're able to do as far as business. It's all connected.
Man, all right. The way that you said that, I imagine that there is nobody who would hear that and not think, damn, I need to tap into this.
Right.
And going back to the letting go, the understanding emotions and the anatomy of emotions, there are more emotions than just, I don't know if this was your experience, but in my experience, I remember 7 to 10 years ago, I think I only knew what anger felt like, what it felt like to be sad, and if I just wasn't feeling anything, right? There's a
Yeah.
whole range of
Yeah.
positive emotions that I didn't have
Mm-hmm.
language for. There's a
Mm-hmm.
whole range of negative emotions that when I thought, oh, I'm good,
Mm-hmm.
that there's language for.
And then
And
you also have a spectrum of negatively or positively charged neutral emotions, which are extremely hard to detect. But I didn't want to cut you off. I just wanted to add that in there too.
that's a very good point. I want you to let me see. Actually, yeah, let's go there. Let's talk about those neutrally charged ones that can be positive or negative, because I think I might know where you're going with it.
Yeah, so where those primaries I mentioned, if you take something like anger, if you take fear, if you take, matter of fact, let's do disdain. Because a lot of times when I bring this up, disdain is a word that can kind of be ambiguous. So I'm big on.
All right. You hit this pause button. Here we go.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, if you want to look at the spectrum, like you mentioned, you got your, of course, obviously positive emotions, happiness, bliss, glee, all of that. You got your negative, what we perceive as negative emotions, and negative don't even really mean bad to me. It means shadow. It means not fully exposed yet. It means, you got plus, which is in front of zero. You got negative behind zero. Often we don't factor in what's behind zero as if it's not there, right? So I'm not saying bad or good. But you got positives, you got the negatives, and then you also have a spectrum of neutral emotions that can have a positive or negative charge, almost like going back to science class, cosine and tangent and all this other shit that I failed and flunked my way out of. But I understand it emotionally. So I was saying, you take an emotion like disdain, right? I'm big into etymology, the origin of where language comes from. And when you take the word disdain apart, you got dis, meaning lack or absence of. You got Dane, which comes from the Latin root word denior, which translates to worth. So you got lack or absence of worth when we talk of something like disdain. Case in point, when I was driving for a living in New Jersey, 13, 14-hour days, delivering stuff, I was always in somebody's traffic, right? So I developed an intense disdain, of course, for traffic because I couldn't see the worth in the experience. And I would sit there and I get frustrated and I'm cursing everybody out, just like everybody cursing me out, right? You know how we do on the East Coast. We don't want to stop for nothing, right? And the anxiety of being late, right? The stressors, the energy is being bled out of my system because now I'm upset about this. Well, if you start to follow the drip, what I started to realize when I started to become aware of what was happening in these moments, that being that I couldn't see the worth in the experience, and initially I couldn't see, well, bro, this is just time for you to put the car in park. Why are you not going nowhere? Do some breath work real quick. This is the current dojo for how to practice patience, for how to practice presence. You can get a meditation in right now. Once I started to look at it that way, the disdain, the intense dislike for this experience started to deplete. And now I had awareness where I realized that even something as tiny as being in traffic, low key, when you go to the neutral negative charge, it felt like injustice. Like it was something I shouldn't have to experience, where I did everything on my route to not be in traffic and I'm still in traffic, which reflected my life. I done put so much effort and work into my life and I'm still fucked up. Injustice was such a major, very difficult um aspect that I very difficult to detect aspect of my life. But as I started to have more range and expanded awareness of my emotions and those neutral ones with a positive or negative charge, then I was able to extract, injustice is even underneath the anxiety and being late or why I got to be in traffic again. That helped me to open up to more of my shadows. So those neutral ones are really the ones that over time go overlooked, the ones we don't know to actually say to a therapist, even when we get into a session, we don't know how to even acknowledge it within ourselves.
And this is why that language is so important too. And like,
Mm-hmm.
if you may not have the words for the feeling and you can just speak enough to there's pressure, there's tightness in my
Right,
chest, and we can start to identify where that is in your chest, what's
right,
happening in your life, where can
right,
you start to like bring more awareness into not just
right.
that part of your body, but into what it represents as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Speaking to the experiencing of the emotions, right? So we've got these neutral emotions that while they
Mm-hmm.
may be on the other side of zero, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we look at those and we experience them and we just,
You're a
take
great
what,
listener, bro.
oh, I appreciate that, man.
Yeah.
if we take from if we take what there is there in those negative experiences, there's
Mm-hmm.
something there that can be used towards something. And when I say
Mm-hmm.
something, I'm speaking more so to a bigger sense of purpose. I'm reading this book again called Outwitting the Devil. And
Mm-hmm.
the devil is the author's having a conversation with the devil. It's by Napoleon Hill. And the conversation is he's asking who he is and where he lives. And we're getting an understanding of the devil not as this tall demon with a
Mm-hmm.
pitchfork, but he calls himself negativity. He said, I'm one
Mm-hmm.
half of everything. So
Mm-hmm.
by this conversation, the devil is on the
Mm-hmm.
other side of zero, right?
Mm-hmm.
And him dwelling in those spaces, this is where the negativity is, and this is where we have lack and we have more fear than anything else. What I'm getting at here is by that logic, in addition to what the author says in the book that the devil hates, is the devil hates people who have definitive purpose. He can't use them, he can't do anything with them.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm saying what I'm trying to get at here is taking what the negative has to give us and using that for the positive towards a
Mm,
sense of purpose. This is how we get to a place where there is no like no wavering or more
mm,
of that negativity. Not to say that the negativity goes away, but it's there
right.
and it's useful for redirection toward your purpose. You mentioned kidney failure, going
Mm,
blind, and I'm sure there were other things as well
mm,
that you were experiencing, but these were like messages for you. These were messages for
right.
you to do
Right.
something different. So had it not been for what was on the other side of zero, had it
Right.
not been for the shadows,
Right.
you wouldn't have been able to be guided in the direction of your healing, which led
Right.
to your wife, which led to this conversation, which led to everything that it's becoming.
Mm-hmm.
Woo! Accurate? Is that accurate? We in the ballpark?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I often say my relationship with my wife is no more important on a soul level than the relationship I was in for 13 years that everybody would have said was toxic, that landed me in jail, that contributed to what was going on with my kidney and my vision and all of that. That shit was just as important. The numbers on the other side of zero and the negative aspect hold up are the foundation for the infinite amount of numbers that come off of it. And a lot of times we'll demonize, we'll have, again, that injustice that I shouldn't have to experience this for what it is that we be asking for on a soul level. God, like, okay, you want that? You're gonna have to go through those negative numbers behind zero to be able to get towards that and even acquire it in a way that you'll actually be able to handle it. My biggest dream, so I thought, was to be a big rap superstar, right? I had deals, I toured, I was out here, was on BT, I was, I did my thing as far as that. But I say all the time now when I talk to my producers from back then, because I'm getting back in my bag, I'm gonna be releasing a new album this year. If it would have happened for me then, that shit would have destroyed me, bro. Stardom would have destroyed me. You was about to say something?
I was gonna say too, like, and if it happened how it was supposed to, in your
Mm-hmm.
perspective, I use air quotes to anybody who's just listening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's going back to that thing. I don't know if you had this mindset before or if this was new about that. I need to get my ducks in a row before I can do this thing. Did you have this
Mm-hmm.
mindset like back
With
then, or
with my music career?
yeah, yeah?
Yeah, I did. I did. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
So this translates, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we get ready by getting ready. We don't just be ready. I don't know if
Right.
that makes sense.
Now I got you.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
all right, cool. So I mean, you live in what we're talking about here, and so much of it is the emotional piece, the emotional intelligence, emotional awareness. But you said you ain't always been like this. One of the things that I had on here was your Twitter handle. Was it former
Former
fuckboy?
fuck boy. Yeah,
Former
former
fuckboy.
fuck boy. Yeah.
So let's talk about what I how I've been communicating about the needs of this symposium is a lot of the women that I talk to about men, or the men that I talk to when they speak about the men, or when the men show up as who they are. There's emotional avoidance, there's emotional ignorance, there's emotional immaturity, and a lack of
Mm-hmm.
emotional availability. So when we
Mm-hmm.
talk about the fuck boy, like, are you seeing some similarities between those emotional components and what it is to be a fuckboy in your experience of being a former fuckboy?
Yeah, I think it's the main aspect I see with it. A lot of my clientele, I've worked with 1,600 people over the past 7 years. Seen a lot in that time. I've been able to download a lot of information, a lot of which ends up on my rails. But working with 300 couples out of those 1,600 people, and now working with so many men, the main thing that I try to advocate to them, to their partners, and then to society at large, even though I'm hard on my brothers because I know what we're capable of. When I get in these rooms with them, bro, and it's just me and them, and 9 times out of 10, they get dragged in there. They don't want to do no therapy with no damn Brick Citi Buddha. But my wife said, if we're going to stay together, I got to do this shit, so I'm here. But then 5, 10 minutes in, they realize I'm cool. I know what I'm talking about. They get comfortable, and then the truth start to come out. And when they get to the depths of like being vulnerable in ways where even their wife isn't able to hear, that the main thing I keep hearing is, bro, I don't want to be like this. I don't want to be a slave to my dick. I'm so fucking tired of this shit, bro. Right? And what often comes up is I'm usually the first person they ever hear this from, or some semblance of, which is, bro, we not sinister. We are not animals. We are not monsters. We just ain't had the tools. Because a large percentage of my male base, I almost want to say like damn near 100%. Once they get their hands on the tools I'm able to send them, they start to employ these tools. They start to recognize like, yo, this shit is not impossible. We just ain't had the science on it. We ain't had the mathematics. And as soon as they do so, a version of them shows up they had never been privy to. Their lady, their wife, their community at large is able to recognize their shift just from us being able to get our hands on the mathematics. And in a large way, I'm writing my book, Memoirs of a Former Fuckboy. That's where the handle came from. And in the first couple chapters, I break down the different epochs, the different eras that led to the current iteration of what we would call a fuckboy. You got slavery, bro. You got chattel slavery, domestic slavery. You got Jim Crow, right? You got Vietnam. You got the crack era. You got the AIDS epidemic, right? And all these other little things in between that have been systematic approaches to separate the Black family, especially by taking out the Black man who was once considered the head of the household. So we not just uncovering or working through our own personal shit. We working through ancestral lineage trauma and karma when it comes to us being able to keep our dick under control. And then the downloads that our forefathers had to work through that's still in our genetic code, still in our DNA. It's so much more to this picture than we often realize. And it's very easy to say, niggas ain't shit. Y'all can't keep y'all dick in the pants. Y'all just fuck boys and this, that, and the third. And then we take that on. We accept that role and we say, well, look, this is natural to manhood. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And then we lose our ability to be able to reprimand ourselves and we just accept the program. So if it's a brother in here today that's working on that, if you see this later after this, I want to let you know you're not a monster, bro. You're not a terrible person, even though you may have some challenges in being able to figure out how to control your sexual energy. It's just a matter of you don't got the keys. Hopefully from this conversation, and if y'all work with me or somebody in y'all vicinity, therapeutically, y'all get the keys, y'all will see what's underneath what you have perceived yourself to be, which is a monster. Yeah.
Man, yeah, thank you for that. Somebody needed to hear that. Somebody needed to hear that. You more than your dick. That's what I was thinking.
Facts.
And it was actually my therapist. My therapist was the first person to tell me that, like, you more than your dick.
Right.
And it was the first time I heard it, so it didn't really like click for me, but it took time. It took more of being willing to be in that space and be in that discomfort for me to realize like what he was actually saying and how that was working for me personally, man. And so, yeah, thank you for saying that because somebody needed to hear it.
And you don't got to sacrifice the fun of being a fuck boy.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because my wife just did a podcast earlier and her multiple personalities came up. The conversation about her multiple personalities sexually came up. So I'm still out here dealing with multiple women via my soulmate, via my wife. We still able to have fun. This is the best sex I ever had in my life. So to a large degree, we think, if I'm a retire from being a fuckboy, all the fun about to be gone. Once you get led to that woman, or your journey may still be women, who knows, but in a more healthy way. I don't badmouth poly and all that shit. I feel like it's overused and over talked about, and people don't really know how to handle it properly. But
how much time you got on that? I want to go there.
We'll get to that next.
There.
Yeah, but let me let y'all know from my perspective, and I was out here, I was moving and shaking. I can't even say I ain't lose a step sexually. I have more access to pleasure now via one woman than I ever had dealing with all the women I was running through. She was Tanya last night, by the way. She Candace Love online. She was Tanya last night. We out here in ATL, so we had to shake it up a little bit.
All right. So I remember there was a video that you spoke to your wife. It kind of ties in with this, but just like maybe the person that's next to you is like feeling like a kid or just wanting to be like watching cartoons, and you know, you might want to be sexual, but
Yeah.
she's not in the place to be sexual. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you speak to that? Because I had that moment with my girl where I saw that and I remembered your video. I was like, I'm sitting there, you know, dick hard in the motherfucker, like, oh, hold on, this might not be the time.
Right.
And then, you know, you kind of sit and you take that pause and you like, you just observe a little bit and you're like, oh, I was right.
Right. Right.
And so, yeah. Talk to me about that particular thing, because I'm a butcher trying to speak to it, you know.
No, it's all good. It's
All
all
right,
good.
go
And
ahead.
even as well as I feel like I explained it in the real, that got a lot of flack. It went super viral as a result. But you know, you had women on there understanding and thanking me that I was advocating for that. Most of it was that women just thanking me for saying it as a man. But then you had women that was like, well, it feels weird that you have to like look at her like a child to, you know, refrain from pushing it into that space. And then you had other men like, you know what, if I'm married, it's her duty. What, she want me to go cheat with somebody? So many different spectrums on there. But pretty much what I was getting at is, you know, we walk around, we are all diet schizophrenic. We all have diet multiple personality. I'm not going to call it a disorder. I'm just going to call it an experience. No version of yourself dies. And like, you know, in science, energy does not die. It can be destroyed. It just changes forms. So that version of you that was at the sandbox and that kid knocked you over when you was 4 years old and you ain't defend yourself and you cried and your mom had to come get you and you always felt the way about that. Yes, the memory is there. The shame from that may come up in a therapy session with me. But that actual tapestry of your soul still exists as its own persona, as its own entity. So when these different versions of ourselves come up, this is why I referenced, I saw her inner child come up, and I'll literally ask her sometimes, what's you about 8 right now? Right? Not in a negative way, like, you know, she'll laugh a certain way or her voice may change. I'm like, how old are you right now? It's like maybe 8 or maybe 16 or whatever it is. This is very much so a part of our interpersonal, interrelational awareness to understand which version of ourselves is present. I've been dealing with grief in a way I've never had to deal with it. My mom just transitioned on Mother's Day. This is some of the heaviest work I've had to do as far as acceptance and detachment in certain ways. And we unintentionally ended up in a 70-day sex fast. Right before my mother even transitioned, Candace went to do an ayahuasca ceremony in Peru. She was out there for 3 weeks. She had a certain dieta that we couldn't have sex before she went, and she would need a month after when she got back. When she got back and it was time for us to, you know, start to engage, my mother got deathly ill. That was another 3 week to whatever process before she actually transitioned. And hindsight being 2020, looking back, I see why my system was giving me that space to gird myself for how much emotional release I was going to have. I still got bags under my eyes from crying 4 times a day for like a month straight. Had I been engaging sexually, it wouldn't have harmed me in any way, shape, or form. But sexual energy can tend to convolute the process of process and emotion, right? So to have my space clear, she recognized Dox needed to just be a son of a mom who just transitioned for this period of his life. So even if she felt the way and she wanted to get it in, she wanted to enter that space with me. So it kind of goes both ways. So that recognition piece is big when it comes to knowing how to navigate when it's the healthiest time to engage a energy as powerful as sex with your partner.
Man, and you said it went both ways. I was sitting there like it's a two-way street, right?
Yeah.
Like being able to have that kind of awareness. There's attunement. Attunement is the word that I'm thinking of. It
Attunement.
sounds like
Yeah.
y'all
Fire.
have attunement.
Fire.
I don't even know what it means. I know I heard it contextually. I
Nah,
was
you
like,
on
yeah, that
point.
makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
But just to be able to give,
Calibrated to a certain frequency.
thank
Attunement.
you.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Because I sure typed it in. I was gonna just
Yeah. I got you.
read it.
I
I
got you,
appreciate it.
bro.
So these kind of relationships, it takes work. And what you spoke to is kind of where I'm at personally. And I'm
Mhm.
trying to identify the words to be able to speak to it. But I think that maybe it's the criticism that might come from people. So like how you spoke to, you know, your community, your social media, and the post went viral about, yeah, sometimes my wife is 8 years old. And they're like, well, you shouldn't be looking at her like that. And then you got
Mhm.
people like, well, it's her
Mhm.
duty, right? Like
Mhm.
this duality way of thinking rather
Mhm.
than just taking
Exactly.
all of that in and being able to go, all right, sometimes this is how she feels. And
Right.
sometimes sometimes this is how I feel. When it
Right.
goes together, beautiful. When it don't
Right.
match up, we can acknowledge that it don't match up.
Right.
Because a lot of people have a lot of the kinds of sex and I don't want to say intimacy with that, but will be having sex that they shouldn't be having or
Yeah.
don't really want to have, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not good sex. And sex is such a powerful creative energy that
Mm-hmm.
can be so much when you got two or more people being present with the
Mm-hmm.
sexual energy, the creative energy.
Mm-hmm.
The gift of life is beautiful. You bring that energy at peak, with
Mm-hmm.
someone else, you can create life. You do that in communities, or you do that with purpose, and you start to create whole new civilizations, whole new ways of being, right? And different forms of community. But I say all of that to speak to that criticism component. Like, you'll get criticism from people
Mm-hmm.
who are not at that level of thinking yet. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that where I'm at now in life, I'm ready for whatever controversy may come out of this. But you said that the polyamory is overplayed, and I wrote here poly/non-monogamy being overplayed. And before I start to like interject like my thoughts about that, what do you have to say just as an expansion of that?
Yeah, before we even do the poly, I just want to say one more thing to what you had just said. Um, Anytime we acquiesce to sex when we are not in that space, either mentally, emotionally, physically. And that's what I said to a lot of the women that commented, why you got to look at her as 8 to understand it's not time to have sex. It don't always have to be that. I don't feel like it right now. That's enough. No problem. Right. But sometimes you are able to see the psychology, what's happening in the moment that also factors in. But I would say that anytime we engage in sex, when we're not really in that space, we are volunteering for emotional sexual abuse. Don't mean somebody took it, but if you are not in that space and you still offer yourself to somebody because this is your duty, or I don't feel like having to hear nobody mouth, I don't want to get in a beef or argument, so yeah, let's just get it in. It's still registering to your sacral chakra as if you are being violated and something is being taken from you that you are not in a space to be able to healthily offer. So we actually have to go to that level. Like I said, cheating is abuse. Maybe last week, there is something also as far as emotional sexual abuse that don't look like rape. It don't look like molestation. It look like, all right, let me just have sex with this man real quick so he'll shut the fuck up, right? It's happening every day, and it's spilling into our relationship in other ways. A lot of times we're not cognizant of. So I just wanted to make sure I get that out in this platform. Did you have something you wanted to say before I go
No,
to?
hey, no, I thought that was funny. I thought that was funny. That damn, what part was it? I don't remember. I was being present, but
Mm-hmm.
just to elaborate on that, man, that's very like profound, man. Like, I haven't heard it in that way, but I've had a
Mm-hmm.
feeling that I haven't been able to put words to. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have sex, but I feel like I need to because I'm less of a man if I don't. Like,
Right,
these have been
right,
experiences in the past, or if it's like, you know, my head is not, I'm unable to be present. And so, like, me and my girlfriend, we started having conversations about this. Like, hey, I'm unable to really be present right now. I got this symposium coming up. I got to get
right,
these
right,
things together. And it's beautiful when it just happens. And we both just like psychologically know, or we
right,
feel intuitively that we're both able to be present. We ain't got to rush. We ain't got to go mechanical. And
right.
it's times where we even check in with each other during sex. And that's something that I've never been able to do in
Mm,
relationships, right? Like, if I notice,
that's huge.
yeah,
Keep going.
like, your body's being different, and I don't know exactly what it is, but I feel something. I think being more connected with my body, I'm able to go, my body's not doing what my body normally does, your body's not doing what it normally does, like, what's off? Or like, if I'm
Wow.
doing what I'm supposed to be and I see that you freezing or your breathing change. A lot of people don't know, like, breath says a lot. It says a lot, right? And you can be breathing heavy because, oh my God, it's so good. Like, I'm just all over the place. I don't know what to do. I'm losing
But
control.
you know the difference, especially when it's your lady.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Or you can be breathing a lot because you're psychologically
Hmm.
somewhere else. And in those moments of trauma, like, we're not taught how to deal with those kinds of things, especially real time. Because a lot of us, we like, if we're in a place of scarcity, and this is kind of very beautiful transition into the non-monogamy thing. If we're in a place of scarcity where we ain't really getting sex like that, we're gonna be like, oh, we're gonna ignore that because we never get sex, right? So
Mm.
I'm gonna get this over with. Bam. All right, cool. And we may not even check in with the person.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so one thing that I can say through non-monogamy that I've learned, I'm in a monogamous relationship now. In that time frame, like I wasn't being thirsty. Like there was never moments where I think that I was able to learn a lot about the kind of relationship that I want through
Mm,
having the different relationships or having the
mm,
options to have different relationships
mm,
because I wasn't thirsty or I wasn't like, oh man, I chose this person, I gotta be with this person, and just unintentionally going about monogamy in a way that didn't align for me. And so I found that in very deep self-reflection, non-monogamy represented an aspect of freedom for me, that it was, yeah, sexual freedom to be with whoever I wanted to be with. And then when I got, and it might have been like less quote safe, if you just
mm,
look at that objectively, uh,
mm,
more, there's a lot of controversy around that. But being in a monogamous relationship never really felt safe and free for me until I got with somebody where I was able to have these kinds of conversations with, and I had like that feeling of freedom here. You mentioned that Candace might be
exactly.
Tanya, right? But in my
Right.
relationship, I'm so aligned and there's such
Right.
compatibility and communication that we could talk about the things that made me feel the sense of freedom that I was getting in multiple relationships. But now, because I'm able to communicate, I'm able to ask for what I need, and I feel attuned to this person, like I'm recognizing that a lot of the things that I was getting through non-monogamy, I just was too afraid to ask for in monogamy. So
Right.
different people were so willing
Right.
to give
Yep.
certain things without me going through the process of being vulnerable and potentially experiencing rejection. So all that to say, like this is kind of a conversation that I want to have. I don't know exactly, the best place platform to have it, but it feels very much like uh that if I had tools that I picked up from in non-monogamy in my monogamous relationships, then I think that I would have had better relationships, whether those had been
Right.
monogamous or non-monogamy.
Yeah.
So
And okay.
no, go ahead, give your feedback. I was going to try and
Nah,
put that
nah,
into a question.
nah. It's all good because like from hearing you say that and being on this side of things, because I used to be an advocate that men not conditioned or built even anatomically to be monogamous, right? I used to champion that. A lot of my content on my Facebook page way back when was about that. I was on a whole other side of the spectrum, but I didn't have the experience of being able to pour into and be poured into by a soulmate level connection to realize that the highest levels of love kind of wipe out your need for those other sexcapades, if you will, right? It's almost like if you digging for oil and you start digging, all right, this shit ain't working. And then you start another one, all right, this shit ain't. And before you know it, you got 20 of these fucking holes you dug looking for this oil. But if you stay dedicated and you just like, nigga, I'm not gonna stop doing this till I get all the way to this fucking oil, and you one day you finally hit it, and then eureka, you're rich for the rest of your life. That's kind of how a lot of times we approach that non-monogamy space. And again, I'm not bad mouthing it. I feel like there's a place for everything in this human experience. But to a large degree, it's been glamorized, it's romanticized, and it's promoted in a way where that's the freedom. Now, being on this end of things, freedom is not having to fucking put my phone face down. Freedom is being able to walk into a room full of beautiful women, which I'm always in this field of work, and being able to recognize, yeah, y'all look nice, y'all look beautiful. I don't want none of y'all, right? Because now I'm in a level of myself where there's a sapiosexuality, there's a demisexuality, needing that emotional connection, and also on a gang shit. And I'm hood, right? This woman got so much stain in with me at this point in my life. She done held my hand. She done wiped my tears. She done seen the deepest, darkest pieces of my shadow. No other woman would have enough time, if whatever time I got left on this life, to catch up, to even get close to sniffing where my wife is on a stain level as far as what we've been able to put in with each other. For me to even look at you twice, outside of if I'm gonna help you heal, right? If it ain't that and it's just not a regular platonic thing, I don't want you. It don't matter how thick you are, how big, that shit don't even register to me in a sexual way, right? That's freedom. Not having to juggle 100 different stories. That's freedom. You know what I'm saying? But you got to like really be able to experience this side of things to recognize fully that that's actually bondage, having to run through all those different energies to get what I get from one woman.
Man, and I think people feel like you gotta like get it out of your system. You gotta have
Mm-hmm.
a whole phase. You gotta,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
go and do this. And even if you look on the internet for like the men's content that's out there, it'll say you need to do these
Yeah.
things. You need
Yeah.
to have more money, have more women,
Yeah.
more looks, more height, more all of
Mm-hmm.
this. And the reality is that when I was able to just like break free from all of that and break free
Mm-hmm.
from, because I think a lot of that did have an influence on
Yeah.
me personally. Like, this is what you're supposed to do. This is what you're
We
supposed
thought
to
that
do.
was alpha male shit.
That's what it was, man. And honestly, bro, being able to like back off and start reading, changing my environment, I would say changing my environment was probably
Mm-hmm.
one of the biggest things. And I work in sex education and STI prevention, STD prevention,
Mm-hmm.
and being in this space, like I'm a black man, I'm one of
Mm-hmm.
very few men who are in this space as well. And I think that like I learned what was important to me to where it's like, all right, it's more important to me to like maintain this image. It's more important that I'm able to do my work in this space because I didn't want to be known as somebody just slinging dick to everybody left and
Right.
right
Right.
just
Right.
because I'm desired. But if I work at that more surface level way of thinking, then I probably could have fucked up what I got going on. And
Exactly.
so just going back to even that whole sense of purpose and being like, okay, this is what's most important to me. When you make that decision, the supporting things happen. When you choose to heal, I chose to be more intentional. And along the way, like I made $15,000 last year. Like the IRS sees $15,000, right? And I met my now girlfriend, who I was just talking about. We had this beautiful relationship. I done moved cities.
Mm.
I'm able to now pay myself through something positive for positive people. And I just
Right.
started this nonprofit for men's emotional wellness resources. And all of these things just like are supporting that bigger decision that I've made
Mm.
of choosing to be more intentional,
Right.
right? And that's healing. Like if I would have got it together, oh, let me wait till I make six figures before I
Right.
start like getting
Right.
into a relationship. Like I'd stop. I said no to this. I'm saying no to this because this is what I'm choosing. And
Mm-hmm.
so this conversation has been very empowering in the sense of just validating choice. Choice is like
Mm.
a power, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when we begin to choose to take this path of healing, we choose to seek out, people who are pumping out the content that we want, that are demonstrating this emotional intelligence, right? And exercising our choice and seeing that we have options. I look at your freebie that you gave away, man, and I hope to be able to direct people to that and that they take action towards it because knowing your non-negotiables, knowing yes you are or no you aren't compatible with somebody is also a big part of you having to do that initial work of being connected to your body, being able to
Mm-hmm.
identify what these feelings are, being able
Right.
to speak to them, and also being able to communicate that to another person, man. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you because we only got 8 minutes left and I wanted
Yeah.
to leave space for Q&A. I knew this was going to fly
Yeah.
by,
Yeah.
but do you have anything that you want to leave us with? Because I know you said you kind of wanted to see what came up for you and be able to just kind of speak from the heart. So I wanted to leave space for that for you, and then we'll invite any questions that people have. Y'all can type them into the chat.
Yeah. Only thing I got is I'm proud of you. You know what I'm saying?
Thanks,
I know
man. I
you. I
appreciate
know you in the capacity of conducting business. You quarterbacking right now, even though you fully present in the conversation. But everything you just rattled off, that's not little shit, bro. I was just watching Baby Boy with my wife the other day. I hadn't seen it in like 10 years, but I used to watch that shit all the time. But it got a completely different meaning for me now at this point. Especially that part where it was those flashes, him as an adult being in that fetus and just trying to get out. Not the fetus, the amniotic fluid and all of that type of shit, like being in his mother's belly. Like this, men being able to break away from this programming is literally trying to escape the matrix. right? So when we are able to start to peek through to the other side, we got to be able to champion that and celebrate that. So for you to be able to have this symposium, right? For you doing the work you're doing, especially in the STI community, like you said, there's not a lot of us there. We the pioneers right now, bro. We are literally downloading the blueprints for new manhood, for a new earth. And it ain't always going to be pretty. We're going to be judged negatively a lot in ways that we don't often deserve. I know what it takes to hold this space. So outside of this conversation or whoever is watching, man to man, brother to brother, I'm proud of you, bro. Salute. That's all I got. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions for Dox before we let him get up out of here? Looking at it here, we see Real Freedom. That was very insightful. Thank y'all for a great conversation. Wonderful tune. I got a private message. Okay. Cool. Hold on, let me see. Great convo. So we're just getting props in the chat right now. So that helps. I guess I can ask one last question and then I'll let you go. But what does it take? Because there's a lot of women here. What does it take to be in a relationship with an emotionally available, mature
Why
man?
you gonna ask that at the end?
Well, hey, this might be a tease for people to come check out some of your content. And I will do something like this again. This will be something that continues. I don't know what it's gonna look like yet, but I got you. I got your contact information.
Yeah, on my new project, I got a line where I said, been blessed with so many talents. And as accountabilities, the highest on the list is accountability. Some women, a lot of women that I have worked with as well, they struggle with accountability because they've been conditioned under the happy wife, happy life. A woman is always right, all that type of ideology. And I understand why they can end up in that space. I'm not saying every woman at all. It's a lot of women that are champions of accountability. But what really allowed me to understand that my wife was going to be capable, and it doesn't mean that I just been right about everything, but the first time we had a situation where I didn't even ask for it, and she apologized to me. And she didn't just apologize. I forgot what she was even apologizing about at the time. But she didn't even just apologize. She went into detail. She went in depth on what it was that she felt like may have hurt me, even if I was conscious of it or not. And by the time she was done with the 10, 15 minutes of talking, I was floored, my nigga. Like, it was like, yo, this shit exists, right? No shade. I know it's women out here with the same capability, but that accountability piece and the ability to exist in a space where you may not clearly and 100% see this particular experience accurately. There may be more context behind your POV that we need to factor in this conversation that may not end up in a space where you was just wrong and I was right. I feel like that is a key piece because it doesn't mean the man is going to have all the wisdom. It means you're open to being a writer of accountability both ways because we both going to fuck up. A lot of times men is cool with being looked at as the fuck ups. A lot of times women don't have that capability of accountability. So I'm sure that's going to ruffle some feathers. Y'all may be mad at me right now. Throw that whole great conversation out the window. I'm cool with that. Next time we can dig deeper into that conversation.
No, that's funny because
Yeah.
I've never heard you say this. I
Right.
followed your content, never heard it come out of your mouth. But
Right.
I was thinking this. I was like, damn, I think that a lot of women can't really handle being with an emotionally intelligent man because that requires accountability.
Yeah.
Whereas men who don't require accountability or who don't know what they want or know, what they expect from a partner, these are people that they're able to more easily control, manipulate, get what they want from, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So me and my girl, we did a live one day, and I was very impressed because she was on the live with somebody, and she was like, "All right, so accountability." I had a situation, and she was talking about something that happened with us. And I remember I was like, she telling people that she finna get canceled because she said
Right.
it was right, and it takes a lot to say that somebody was right, especially like a man in 2024 to go on social media as a woman and say he was right and I was wrong, right? But yeah, that was all it was. I'm glad you got to say that.
No doubt.
I'm gonna send this to her. But I appreciate you, man. I'm gonna go ahead and let you get off of here. We'll be in touch.
Absolutely.
And yeah, we got one more. Next, we got Cam Frazier coming, but Brick Citi Buddha, Dox Diggla. How can people connect with you?
Just thank y'all for your presence and your attention. Y'all can find me on IG, Brick, just as it's spelled, _city, CITI _Buddha, BUDDHA. You can hit me up on Facebook. I'm Dox Diggla over there, DOXDIGGLA. And for the most part, that's the easiest ways to contact me. Shoot me a DM. I will respond. I respond to everybody. I get a lot of DMs, but I'm always respond because I remember what it was like being in a space where I wanted to talk to certain people that I may have looked up to and they would never respond back. I respond to everybody. Shoot me a DM.
Perfect. All right, my man. Take care.
Appreciate y'all. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, y'all. That was Dox Diggla, the Brick Citi Buddha. I hope y'all stick around for the final speaker that we got today, y'all. We got Cam Frazier. He got here a little bit early. I'm gonna go to the restroom and get my water. Well, actually, I'm gonna be back in like a minute and a half. So y'all just chill for a second, and then Cam, I'm gonna add you so people can see your face.